Learning goal number 20, inequalities. Learning goal number 20, inequalities. My best advice would be to listen and then copy. So, inequalities. Hopefully we've seen these before, but we use inequalities to represent a range of values. When we talk about equations, there's only normally one solution, but inequalities have a range of answers. For example, less than, right? This is a less than symbol, so we refer to it as less than. You may often see the word fewer than written, and we want to translate that into a less than symbol. Greater than is represented with this symbol. You could also see the word more than or exceeds used to represent that. So when you're talking about values that are less than something, they are all further down the number line to the left. Values that are greater than something are all further down the number line to the right. And then less than or equal to, right? That means it could be less than it, or it could be having the same value of it. Okay, no more than, again, that's a less than or equal to word. It means it couldn't be any more than it, but it could be equal to it, so it's less than or equal to, or at most. Greater than or equal to is greater than or equal to, no less than, or at least. So these words are used to represent each of these inequalities. Now, before we go any further, we have to understand this too. When we're graphing a less than or a greater than, either one of these, we use open circles. Okay? And I'll talk more about that later. If I'm graphing either one of these, less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, we use closed circles. Very important information there. So these are just words we use to represent them. Let's get into some examples. Okay, example number 1 here. I want you to write an inequality. So, to be a U.S. Senator, you must be 30 years of age or older. So let's let X represent the age, right? Or we could use A. I'll use A. So A is going to represent age. Now, they're saying that age has to be in some relation to 30. So, the way I want to think about this is, can your age be greater than 30, or could it be less than 30? To be a senator, okay? So I'll call this age of a senator, actually, to be more specific. So to be a U.S. Senator, you must be 30 years of age or older. So it means the age has to be greater than 30, or it could be equal to 30, right? So I say that A has to be greater than or equal to 30. The age could be exactly 30, or it could be greater than 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, so on, going up. But it has to be at least 30, or it can't be less than 30, right? No less than 30, it's got to be greater than or equal to 30. So I took words there and I wrote it as an inequality. All right, now, example number 2, I want you to state whether each inequality is true or false. So, negative 16 over A is greater than negative 1, okay? And A is equal to 8. So what I need to do here is just substitute A in for 8. So negative 16 over 8. I'll put it in parentheses, as I always do when I substitute, so I can see what's happening. And then I'll simplify. Negative 16 divided by 8, negative 16 over 8 gives you negative 2. So you want to ask yourself, is negative 2 greater than negative 1? Well, if you're looking at a number line, here's negative 1, here's negative 2. Negative 2 is further to the left, which is the lesser values to the left. So negative 2 is in fact not greater than negative 1, and this is false. So all I had to do was substitute in for A what they told me, and then from there I could simplify and then determine if it was true or false. If it said negative 2 was less than negative 1, that would be true. All right, finally, let's take a look at examples 3 and 4. So we're asked to graph these inequalities. Okay, so to graph the inequality, we need to go to that number on the number line. For example, 6. Now, my best advice is if you want to graph an inequality, make sure your variable is always written on the left-hand side. In this case, it is. X is greater than 6. In the next one, it's not. But if I want to graph this, x is greater than 6, you could first think about it and go from there, or you could go through some rules. If it's a greater than or a less than symbol, it's going to be an open circle on 6. Because it can't be equal to 6, so I use an open circle to represent that. And then, if your variable is on the left-hand side, you always shade in the direction the inequality is pointing. The inequality is pointing to the right, so I'm going to shade to the right. Again, for example, this inequality is pointing that way, so I'm going to shade that way. And I try to shade this arrow in to show that it's going to continue on. Or I could just think about it this way. If x is greater than 6, right, all the values that are greater than 6 are up there. Those are a part of my solution. That's why they're shaded. It can't be 6, so I use an open circle, and I shade to the right. Now, number 4, -1 is less than or equal to x. Before I do that, I want to flip it. But to flip an inequality, you have to flip everything. So you take the x from the right, you move it over to the left. You take the inequality that is a less than or equal to right now facing that way, and you flip that also, so it becomes a greater than or equal to, and then you send that -1 over there. So you have x is greater than or equal to -1. Now that it's on the left-hand side, I want to go from there. Write my number line. I'm just going to focus on -1. It's a greater than or equal to. When you have a greater than or equal to symbol, you have to put a closed circle. Why? Because x can actually equal -1. So we use that closed circle to represent that. Here, when x was greater than 6, x can't be equal to 6. So we use an open circle. Greater than or less than, open circle. Greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, closed circle. Now, x is greater than or equal to -1. It's pointing in that direction. I will shade in that direction. Also, to understand it, x is greater than or equal to -1. All of the values that are going to be greater than -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and further on to the right. Okay, so we went through a few different examples where we are working with inequalities and really just being introduced to the ideas of inequalities. Now let's take a look at a few examples on our own.